So sorry if you were tuning in and you had to see me reboot my computer to get things operational. So just to recap, and I'll add to the chat as well, but I'm on an AMD. I'm using Windows. This is the first time for both in probably 15 years that I've been doing it. I don't think I've ever developed mobile applications on Windows before, so this is a new experience. So what I had to do is I had to actually go ahead and enable virtualization in my motherboard BIOS settings. So I was following this tutorial by Corbin Crutchley. And while it didn't match up exactly, it did match up to somewhat what I needed to do. So for example, I did enable SVM. So this was right in my, I'm not using Gigabyte, I'm using an Asus motherboard. But I was able to enable it. It was in my CPU advanced CPU functionality options. I wasn't able to find IO MMU though. So that I couldn't find it inside of my BIOS settings. I think I may be all right though, because if I go to my task manager, and I'll drag that onto the screen here. If I go to the task manager and I click on performance, it now says virtualization is enabled, and I realize that's quite small. I'm not sure if I can zoom in on the font here, but I believe it was disabled before. So this is a good sign that everything is good. What I also did was I also installed the hypervisor driver for AMD. So this was failing previously, and I'm not sure if I can zoom in on this. Let's give it a shot. All right, I can. So it was failing previously because I didn't have virtualization enabled in my BIOS. So I actually enabled it, and when I ran it this time, it looks like it succeeded. I'm not seeing anything that says otherwise, that says that maybe it won't succeed. So that's good. Also, and this was from the previous stream that I did before I had to reboot, so this is just a recap. I did type in optional features like it said in this tutorial. So when I opened it, I did search for Hyper-V, so that's enabled. I scrolled down and I enabled the, what did I enable here? The Windows Hypervisor platform. I didn't enable Windows Sandbox. So this feature wasn't available to me previously. And I don't know if that's truly going to have any kind of effect. I'm not sure exactly what it does. We can always come back to it if for some reason it doesn't work out. So let's go ahead and give it a shot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize this. I'm going to go back into Android Studio. So Android Studio is what I had downloaded prior to rebooting. So this is how typically the easiest way to get the Android SDK, regardless of on your Mac, Windows, or Linux. I've done it other ways in the past. It works out fine, but it turns into a headache sometimes. Android Studio definitely helped. So if I go into the AMD Manager, let's go ahead and set up a new virtual device. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a Pixel 2. And I'm not sure if I can zoom in. So I apologize if the font is a little small. Actually, let me just give it a try just for laughs. Yeah, I don't see an option to zoom. But I'm going to choose Pixel 2. I'm going to say next. And I'm going to download, let's go ahead and say maybe Android Q. I think that's the latest. I think R might be release candidate still. So let's go ahead and download Q. Not going to hurt us if we use a little bit of an out-of-date emulator, by far. While that's doing its thing, I'll go back into the other tab of Android Studio, and maybe it won't let me do that. But basically what we did was, because this is an AMD computer, if you're on Intel, I don't think you'll have to go through this. I actually did have to download this tool right here, this hypervisor driver. This wasn't included out of the box. And I did that through the Android SDK settings inside of Android Studio. So just something to take note of. So this is a first time experience. So hopefully somebody or myself can look back on this and see how to do this. It's definitely not as straightforward as it was all the times that I've done it on Mac. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to have trouble long term. It just means that the setup is different. So it's almost done. Just gonna chill out for just a second. Just want to reiterate that I'm live in the chat. So let me just type in the chat to tell everyone I'm live. Whoops, I'm live. So yeah, engage. If you have any questions, definitely want to answer them. So it looks like it's done. So I'm gonna say finish, and let's go ahead and try to use it. So I'm gonna say next. We can call this Pixel 2. Maybe I'll just call it Pixel 2 rather than defining the API information as well. I think I could leave everything else as the default. So I'm going to say finish and basically cross my fingers that I don't need that Windows sandbox environment. So let's go ahead and say launch. I guess worst case scenario is it's going to start throwing all kinds of errors at us. And we'll try to deploy a sample application as well to make sure that everything's functional. Oh, that's just the window I had in the background. I just wanted to reiterate, I don't think I've ever set up a Windows computer for mobile development. So this is a first time experience. So it looks like it booted up. Let's go ahead and maybe see. I have Android Studio open here. I could probably close this right here. Let's first start by creating a new Android Studio project. I realize that everything's kind of small on my screen. You don't really need to see it. I'll tell you about it. But we have basic activity. Maybe we'll just leave it as empty. We just want the basics. I'll just call it my application. It's fine if it stores it in my home path. I'm more familiar with Java than I am Kotlin. And the minimum SDK, let's just go ahead and say 16. The purpose here is just to get it working, to show that, hey, I did all of the virtualization stuff that I needed. Everything should be all right as of now. So it looks like this is good. And what we can do is let it load up for now. Let's see if I can zoom in. I don't typically use Android Studio. I'll switch to Visual Studio Code after this. But let's see if I can just run this application. It's asking for access. I'll go ahead and allow it. Let's go ahead and say run, and then I'm going to just click run. I guess it wants me to look at the configurations here. It's an Android app. Maybe we can get lucky here. Again, I'm not. I don't typically use the IDE that comes with Visual Studio Code, or not Visual Studio Code. Android Studio. I think it's just IntelliJ. But we'll see how far we get here. Really, let me minimize this. Go ahead and look at that. It might still be booting up. This is the first time that I'm trying it. That's the AMD Manager, SDK Manager. No, that's not what I want. Oh, so it's detecting my Pixel 2, which is good. Let's say run. So it looks like maybe we have to run it that way rather than run up here. I would have assumed that they do the same thing, but you know what? I'm not going to argue it because this isn't a tool that I typically use for Android development. It looks like it installed successfully, it said. That would have been very fast. And it actually looks like it did. Oh, touching the wrong window here. So it looks like it did actually. So that was incredibly fast. Let's just try to change it real quick. See if we can change this text at the top. So maybe we look in the resources directory. We look at values and maybe strings. and this is the my application. So we'll say Nick Raboy's application. I'll save it. We'll see if I don't think it's hot reloading. My antivirus might be having some impact. Let's. Oh, you know what? I think there was a hot reload button. We'll try that next. It doesn't like the apostrophe. Let's see if I can escape it. That might have done it. So it looks like it worked. And I can change it back to maybe nraboy, and we'll try this hot reload functionality. So what is this? Just hovering it over apply changes and restart versus run app. So let's just apply changes and restart. And it looks like that did the trick. So so it does look like this is working. So this if Crutchcorn is watching, again, Crutchcorn is Corbin. So I did follow, and I'll add it to the chat in case people want to look at it after the fact as well. If you're on AMD like I am, probably get the same performance regardless on what you're using in the end. But let's go ahead and close Android Studio. This is not something that I'm particularly used to, and it's the good thing about mobile development is you don't necessarily need to use it. So let's exit. What I'm going to do is find my mouse here, and if you do need Android Studio, it's just developer.android.com, and then you should be able to find the Android Studio tab. I'm going to get out of this terminal because I do have it running with admin permissions. So let's go ahead and close it out. I'm going to go and open up a new terminal, one with less privileges. And I do have Nodejs installed. I can say node version and then npm version. And let me zoom in so that way it's a little easier to read. Basically what I'm going to do, and I mentioned this in the other video, I'll mention it again, but more recently when it comes to mobile development, most of my mobile development's been with NativeScript because I get to use some common web frameworks like Vue, Angular. I think you could even use React with it nowadays. But you can use those technologies to kind of tie into the Android SDK or even Xcode and what Apple offers to develop native applications. So these are not hybrid, these are not web applications, these are native mobile. So it's just something that I've found preference in. So let's go ahead and install it. So I'm going to say npm install, and I'm going to do a global install of NativeScript. Now, I'm not going to go in depth when it comes to developing NativeScript applications. That was out of the scope of what I wanted to accomplish with this stream. But I just wanted to show that you could still use our setup for kind of other technologies here. So let's see. Support for Node.js is not verified. So I'm using probably a 2 bleeding edge version of Node. So let's see what we got. It may still be all right. Let's stay positive. So let's say TNS version. No, of course it's not all right. All right, so it looks like it didn't install correctly. Let me do it one more time. It figures that when I set up this computer, though, I'm using a version that's too new for Node, and because I didn't use NVM. I probably should have used NVM, but I did not. All right. Let me just look into this real quick. We'll troubleshoot it together here. I believe I'm getting these same errors. Let's, yeah. No, not even. Maybe it's because I didn't use a privileged shell. I didn't think I had to for npm packages. So let's let me copy this. And this is an old post. Let's. All right, hold on. Hold on. If anyone in the chat has experience with this, please definitely say something. So again, I'm a new Windows user here, so just running into little bumps that Windows has when it comes to mobile development or just development in general, I think. I'm a little skeptical about just running commands that I don't truly understand on the internet. Let's see what we've got here. All right, 1 second. Let me Google what this means. Let's try this. Oops. They're all undefined. Interesting. I guess worst case scenario is I could change it back afterwards. But it would make me feel a little bit better what remote signed is. Just running unsigned scripts. Wonder if this is common with npm here. I'll copy this command. Oh, here we go. Remote signed. This is the default, so, oh, for server. All right, so scripts can run. Risks running unsigned scripts other than the internet. That, I'm not sure if that makes any sense. Where else would they come from? But let's run it. It looks like it might be safe here. So I copied that command. Let's see if I need to be in the admin PowerShell. Oops. Might have worked. Let's try it. Yeah, that worked. All right, so let's say TNS version again. It didn't run properly. Let's maybe just for the heck of it say npm install g NativeScript again. I have no idea if the same results will happen when it comes to React Native, Ionic Framework, etc. It looks like it might have worked. I'm getting the same error, but that might just be a compatibility issue between the Node version that I'm using. Let's go ahead and say version again. Seems all right. Let's go ahead and navigate to the desktop, and let's go ahead and say TNS create, and let's go ahead and say example. Oops. It might not let me. Let's say TNS help. Yeah, it looks like it's spazzing out completely here. This stream could be very useful or very awful, because that's just a lot of me doing a lot of troubleshooting, Windows troubleshooting. So let's see. All right, so what I might do is, first of all, let's go see what's the latest version of Node.js. So 14.2, and the stable version is 12. So let's go ahead and say chocolatey say uninstall package. I'm new to Chocolatey too. I'm used to using Homebrew for Mac, so this is a new one. Choco uninstall, and then probably Node.js. So I need to be an admin shell. Remove dependencies. I assume that's what I want. Check it out. Let me see if I can install a specific version of Node as well. So I definitely don't want the latest right there, but maybe I can install a specific version. All right, looks like it. So let's start. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start inside of a terminal that has admin privileges. And I'm going to say choco uninstall Nodejs, and I believe what we wanted to do is we wanted to say remove dependencies. Just to get everything. That's what they were doing here. Remove dependencies. Let's check it out. Remove dependencies. I'll go back. Again, if I guess if I really wanted to, I should be using NVM. But I'm just not good at it. And I think it was using a non-official contributor, which made me a little nervous. Whereas this was Chocolatey and the Node.js Foundation. So let's go ahead and try it out. Let's get this specific version, which might be more compatible. I paste it in. Failure. Cannot uninstall. Oh, I actually had the uninstall up. Let's say install. Paste it in. I realize a lot of the stream is just me embarrassing myself with Windows and doing a lot of troubleshooting. But I know I'm not the only one who's ever had an issue making that switch from maybe Mac or Linux to Windows and just trying to get set up with mobile development. And we already got it working for native, like vanilla Android. Now we're just trying to get into the cross-platform frameworks just to see if we can get that working as well. So it looks like it worked. I'm going to get out of the admin shell because I'm just not that comfortable inside of it yet since I'm a new Windows user. So I'm just going to go back to the standard here. I'm going to say node version. It looks like I'm using a better version now. So let's go ahead and say npm install -g NativeScript. Help us improve. Nah, I usually say no. Do I want to enable it? No, I won't enable that. And I'll decline. So this is good. I didn't get any errors this time. So this particular package didn't like the bleeding edge node. So, I mean, I think that's pretty common, especially since 14 came out so recently. So I'm going to clear it. I'm going to say cd desktop and say tns create, say maybe example. I'm going to choose Angular. Hello world is fine. It's going to take a moment. Just to reiterate again, already got this simulator working. This was probably the most difficult step so far, even more difficult than this Node.js drama, because I am on AMD, and there are some steps that I had to do in order to get virtualization working on Windows. So it looks like it was added, so I'm going to cd into the example directory path, and I'm going to just ls it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say tns run Android and see where we end up. We may end up nowhere, but we're going to test it out. All right, so I have some setup issues. So this is where I can start to learn how to do environment variables on Windows. So let's check it out. So Android Home, not set. So I believe what I want to do is I want to say, maybe I can search for it. Edit the system environment variables. That actually edit the environment variables for my account. That sounds even better. So let's check it out. Let's go ahead and say new, maybe. Just checking to make sure it's nowhere. I say new. I'm going to call this one Android Home. And the variable value is going to be, let's actually navigate to it. See if I can open up a new tab here. So I'm going to say, and I'll zoom in more, cd app data, and then I was in Android. No, I wasn't. I was in local Android SDK. Let's see if path works. All right, it does work actually. That's good. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back into where I was setting those. I'm going to paste it in. And I am going to say OK. I'm going to say OK. See if that fixes any issues here. So we had an Android SDK issue. We have possibly a Java issue. Let's go ahead and clear this and see if maybe both of them get corrected right now. I can actually say TNS doctor. So let's see what we've got. So that's weird. I'm wondering if I have to exit the terminal for the values to take effect. Sometimes I have to do that on Mac as well. So desktop example TNS doctor. Yeah, so I just had to restart the terminal in order for it to detect that new environment variable for the Android Home. Now it's saying the Java directory. So let's we got to set a Java Home, and I believe we should be having that baked directly into the Android SDK, which is part of the reason why or the Android Studio, which is part of the reason why I like Android Studio. So let's see, SDK. Let's go ahead and say maybe tools. Let's around here somewhere. Because if Android Studio is able to work, that means that Java is somewhere. Let's check out. Let's see if it actually tells us inside of Android Studio itself. I actually wanted to look at the little splash window. I don't think it didn't pop up. It's all right. Maybe I can get to it from file or settings or something. All right, let's see if I can do a search for Java. It's somewhere. All right, hold on here. We're gonna find it. Let's check this out. Hold on. Was it in there and I just missed it this whole time? No, I don't see it in there. I mean, I could install it separately. I really don't want to. If it already exists on my system, maybe it's... Maybe if I go cd... Oops. Oops. Is there Java in there? No. It should be there. Oh, Android maybe. Let's check it. Let's check that. Perfect. There we go. CD JRE. And I'll zoom in too. And I'll show the path. So the path to the JRE that Android Studio uses, so that way I don't have to go and download it a second time. Because for now, at least, my only Java development will be for Android. It's inside of the program files path. So what I want to do is I want to actually, I think this might be it. I think that might be the actual path. Bin Java. That might be my Java home, but let's check it out. Yeah, let's try that. Let's go ahead and copy that path. And I'm going to say environment variables again for my account. I'm going to say Java home, paste it in. And I'm going to say OK. Just like before, what I had to do is I had to close the terminal. So we're going to go back into the project. It's on our desktop. I'm going to say example. And I'm going to say TNS doctor again and see if all of our problems are solved. And it looks like it is. So that's good. So let's here's the $1 million question, I guess. Does it work? And I'll zoom in. I'm going to say TNS run Android. Open up my simulator just in case things start changing. going to take a second this first time because it's getting Android dependencies of Gradle. So you don't need to be using NativeScript to develop Android applications on Windows. If you want to use Kotlin or Java, probably stick to Android Studio. If you want to use React Native, that's an option as well. If you do have interest in NativeScript, I think it's great. If you do, I do have a course. So it shows you how to build and get started with building NativeScript applications using Angular. I'm not going to go into the depth of it right now. For our example was just getting it set up with Windows, because that's something I didn't do in the course. Didn't have a Windows computer, wasn't able to test it. This is actually my first time. I think this is my first time setting up NativeScript on Windows, or just Android in general. But if you've got Android set up, if you're ready to go with it, check out the course. It'll teach you a lot. You can develop these applications real easily. So it looks like it's working, if you can believe it. So this is a NativeScript application, and it deployed directly to my Android simulator. So far so good. I mean, if I wanted to, I just stopped it. I'm gonna open up Visual Studio Code here for the project. Actually gonna drag this over here. This is the project that I have in Visual Studio Code. So I mean, again, I'm not going to go too far in depth, but what we saw on that main page was item. So if I open up item.html, we have a list of items there, and we have an action bar title that says my app. We don't need to see this anymore. But if I go to the emulator, it says my app. So this is an option. And like I said, I generally don't use Android Studio anymore. It's been a while since I've developed native Android with just vanilla Java or vanilla Kotlin. And there's nothing wrong with Android Studio. And you can easily develop those applications in Visual Studio Code as well. I've just gone the cross-platform route. So I'll just do some recap in case you're coming in late to the stream. Just to tell my experience, because it looks like everything's good to go right now. So the first thing that I did was I downloaded Android Studio. So like I had mentioned, you can download just the Android SDK, and you can configure that however you want. It could work. I've done that many times in the past on Mac. It's definitely not the most convenient. I've just decided to go with Android Studio. I've been doing that route for a while now, because it includes everything really that I need. It includes a nice UI for updating the packages and versions of Android. Everything's kind of baked in real nicely. So I just downloaded the one for Windows. It was like 800 megabytes, which was quite large, but it's very feature rich. But I downloaded it, and then I realized that, hey, I have a Windows computer now. I have AMD. I'm not using Intel. So there's a little bit of involvement that I have to do on top of that. So inside of Android Studio, I know I keep closing it. Let's see here. I don't know how to get back to the little pop-up dialog, the splash screen that you see when you first try to use it. But basically what we did is we went into the SDK Manager. It looked like this. I unfortunately don't know how to zoom in. So you'll just have to take my word on everything that I say. But I went to SDK Tools, and I installed the Android Emulator Hypervisor driver for AMD. I don't think you need to install this if you're using Intel processors, but I am using AMD, so this was a requirement. The other requirement, I had to go into my BIOS settings. I had to enable something called SVM. And I actually found out about it because Crutchcorn in the chat linked me to his blog post. So it was on Unicorn Utterances. And it was this post right here. I hadn't seen it before, so let me paste that into the chat. So that way it's there again. Oh, it's actually still in the chat. My mistake. So basically what I had to do is I had to enable SVM mode. I really don't know what IOMMU is. I couldn't find this inside of my BIOS settings. So I don't think it was an absolute requirement. It may be depending on your motherboard, but it didn't seem to be a requirement for me, unless I just haven't found a scenario where it's necessary yet. So I followed his tutorial. I also did the optional features that he mentioned. So this is where this dialog was, and I know that's very small. I did the Hyper-V, and I did the Windows Hypervisor platform. I didn't do the Windows Sandbox. So I was able to get the emulator working without the Windows Sandbox. I'm not sure what that is. I'm not sure if I'm missing out on something by not enabling it, but because it seemed to work already, I'm going to leave it disabled for now. So after that, I mean, I did require some rebooting, which I had to stop the stream for. But after that, I was able to create an AVD, so an Android emulator. So if I click on this right here, I was able to create an emulator. I called it Pixel 2, and that's this emulator right here. So that worked out successfully. And I tested that it was working out correctly because I just used the default Android project for Java and deployed it, and it worked out fine. Then I decided, you know what, I'm gonna take it a step further, and decided that, hey, why don't we try another option when it comes to mobile development on Windows, and that's NativeScript is an option. And I'm gonna paste that in the chat. I tried vanilla Android and then NativeScript. So I did run into issues with that, and it wasn't anything to do with Android. It was more to do with I was using a two bleeding edge version of npm and Node. So NativeScript isn't quite there yet when it comes to Nodejs 14. I think Nodejs 14 just came out, so it's very bleeding edge. It's not the long-term stable release yet. So I actually went into Chocolatey, which is the package manager that people use for Windows, and I just installed the lower version. And that seemed to work. I didn't install NVM. I just went with a standard version of Node. So that worked out. I created a new project, and it seemed to work. I was able to open it. I did TNS Doctor, so I set up the paths. Let's see if I can print them out. So let's say, I'm not quite sure how to do it on Windows, but maybe Android Home. Maybe that'll work. No? Maybe I can do it the old Mac way. So let's say echo Android Home. No, that doesn't work either. Let's say Windows PowerShell output environment variables. I'm still learning. Windows here. Echo env path. So let's go ahead and check it out. Echo env and then Android Home. That seemed to work. So this was my Android SDK path, not Android Studio, but Android SDK, which was installed by Android Studio. So that had to be set to get NativeScript working. I also had to do echo env Java Home. So I didn't actually have to go and install Java a second time. So Java was shipped with Android Studio, which is another convenience. I just had to set the path. So I set those in my Windows environment variables. I had just searched for them. So environment variables for my account, and I added them to this list. So not too bad. And I didn't have to download anything extra. So everything worked out all right. Like I said, and I'll do just a shameless plug here again. If you do want to do some mobile development with NativeScript, and this should work absolutely fine with Windows, because as I showed you just now, it's loading fine in the simulator after I got everything working. Just check out this NativeScript for the Angular developer course. I have a lot of different topics, and by the end of it, you should be able to develop a really capable application. I mean, this is a several-hour course, but after that, you should be a pretty good wizard at it. And this is with Angular. Like I mentioned, NativeScript, you can do just vanilla JavaScript, Angular, Vue, I think even React nowadays. I haven't tried that yet. Personally, I think if you were to do React, you might just go React Native rather than React NativeScript. But that's just my own personal preference. So I probably won't put this stream up on YouTube. It's long. I did a lot of troubleshooting. So I don't want to bore anyone. But if you wanted to check out my YouTube channel, you can find it there. I do put my live streams up there, provided that they're not just a complete mess. As always, check out the website. I'm just dropping links everywhere. And I want to drop the courses section as well. So courses.thepolyglotdeveloper.com. So that should be enough to get you started. If you enjoyed the stream, let me know about it. I know that it's not for everyone, but if you're like me, if you're new to Windows, or if you're even new to mobile development, the setup is kind of a hassle. It's always a hassle. It's probably, out of all the development stuff that I've done, and I do Node, Go, a bunch of different things, mobile development setup is kind of the worst. But we got there. Didn't take too long, and you can develop some really great things. So thanks for tuning in. Until next time.